friends, I am Arpit and I'm here with today's analysis. Today is 8th of May and we're going to deal with two very important topics which are in news. The cancer cases in India, they are on the rise. Apollo Hospitals has conducted a study and they have found out this. Not only among the adults, but among the children also, the cancer cases are on the rise. In fact, in this report, South Asia has been termed as the cancer capital of the world because the rate of increase of cancer cases in South India is the highest in the world. There are multiple factors which are responsible for causing cancer or the rising cancer cases. First is the rising age. Second is the increased air pollution with more number of carcinogens means cancer causing agents in it. Global warming with increased exposure to ultraviolet radiations. And the fourth is unhealthy diet practices. We need to take care of these. And, the government, on the other hand, needs to step up on the screenings and all. Government should also be providing financial support to the people who have contracted cancer. Second is carbon farming. Now, farming in itself is a major source of greenhouse gases. Talk about the rice fields, methane is emitted. You talk about mechanization in agriculture, vehicular emissions are there. You talk about application of fertilizers and all, then due to nitrification, nitrous oxides are released, a greenhouse gas. Burning, stubble burning and all happens, pollutants are released, causing greenhouse effect. So carbon farming is that particular practice in which you conserve the environment on one hand by uh, creating more and more carbon sinks like agroforestry and all, you plant trees and all along with the fields, and on the other hand focusing upon the increasing agricultural productivity. This is the concept of carbon farming. There's a lot of potential of this in India which needs to be adopted when at the global level in Australia, USA and other countries, carbon farming techniques have started to get adopted. So it is high time that India should also adopt this. Let's get started. The cancer cases in India. Increasing number of people are getting cancer. Seen that? Now in this map, you can see, number of cancer patients by the region. And maximum number of cancer patients you will find over here in North India. So report released by Apollo Hospitals last month labeled South Asian nation as the cancer capital of the world. South Asia includes Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Maldives. Why this region was called as the cancer capital of the world? Because, the most, I would say, the highest number of new cases which emerged anywhere across the world was in this region. The findings. Now, the study revealed an alarming picture of declining overall health across the country. Report found that present 1 in 3 Indians is pre-diabetic, means just on the verge of getting diabetes. 2 in 3 are pre-hypersensitive or hypertensive, means high BP. 1 in 10 struggles with depression. Now, these are certain conditions which make our body vulnerable to other diseases. Cancer can be one of them. The chronic conditions like cancer, diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular diseases, and mental health disorders are now prevalent, that they have reached the critical levels in our country. But nobody's talking about them too much. So we need to take care of these. The study projected that number of annual cancer cases, they have risen from 1.4 million in 2020 to 1.57 million by 2025. They will be rising, it is projected. Breast, cervix, and ovarian cancer are the most common forms of cancer among women. And, you know, lung cancer, mouth cancer, and prostate cancer are the most common cancers among men. This is basically the finding in that particular report. The factors causing cancer, there are four major factors causing cancer. First is your growing age, no doubt about that, because when your age is growing, your capacity of fighting diseases reduces. Now, cancer generally is caused when, in your body, there are cells. The fundamental element is cells. And, you know, these cells have a specific life. They die, they are replaced by the newer cells. Now, in cancer, what happens? The older cells do not die. They kept, they keep on accumulating. They become as tumors. And it becomes very important for them to die and new cells to replace them. This is how the cell cycle has to be. But cancer is basically that disease in which that cell cycle is disturbed, where the older cells are not dying. And as you grow up, your age goes up, you know, this thing, the cells and all which are not dying, your body is more prone to see such kind of conditions. Then unhealthy diets with ultra processed food, pizza, burger, cheese, or for that matter, unprocessed oils and all, or ultra processed oils and all. So this is another factor. Next is exposure to air pollution, which is related with carcinogens. Carcinogens are cancer causing agents. And last is climate change with increased exposure to ultraviolet radiations. These are the four factors which are causing this. Now, the issues with pediatric cancer. Pediatric means children. Around 1 million new cases of cancer are happening in India, and out of which 4% are in children. Million means 10 lakh cases are happening, and out of 10 lakh, 40,000 are children. Doctors and other health professionals say there is shortage of pediatric oncology. Oncology is that branch of medical science which deals with cancer treatment. The doctor is called as an oncologist. So there is no pediatric oncology department in multiple, I would say, hospitals, especially the government hospitals. Only 41% of public hospitals have dedicated pediatric oncology departments. Additionally, a lack of funds and access to care. This is one such major reason. The poor parents and all, they give up on the treatment because they cannot afford it. And the children have to suffer. Most of them die. There are fatalities. Then, diagnosis is also not apt. Access to care and medications and follow-ups are difficult, and there is a lot of abandonment of treatment also. At times the diagnosis is late, and by that time the conditions are worse, because if you go to a hospital where there is no oncology department or pediatric oncology department, the doctors will do some hit and trial. They'll not be able to understand that what is the actual reason behind this particular, I would say, symptoms which are there in that person, in that child. So there is problem. What should we do? So first is we need to increase the screening rates. Screening means testing. And it is a big challenge as of now in our country. Screening rates will increase when obviously number of more oncology departments will be there. Like 41% of the public hospitals have the pediatric oncology department. Those should increase, first of all. And not only talking about pediatric cancer, but overall cancer treatment, screening rates should increase. Like breast cancer is quite common among females. So, how much screening do we do of the females? It is less than 1%. 1%, less than 1% females are screened for breast cancer. Jabki WHO recommends that at least 70% of women should get tested. So, we are very far behind when it comes to screening. So, we should increase the screening. This is one thing which we should be doing. And also policies to impart financial protection. This should be done. Policies should be there because cancer treatment is expensive. So like Ayushman Bharat is there as a policy intervention which gives us cover of 5 lakh rupees. So in case of cancer, that cover can be increased by the government. So these things can happen. Next is carbon farming. Carbon farming basically, as the name suggests, conservation of carbon on one side means conservation of the environment. Conservation of the environment will also lead to conservation of soil health, conservation of water in that area. This, along with farming, means doing the farming, increasing the productivity. Farming is not only simple farming. So we decode this. Farming productivity should increase, and carbon sequestration should be there. Carbon sequestration means taking in the carbon, excess carbon from the atmosphere. This excess carbon in the atmosphere is causing greenhouse gases, greenhouse effect, global warming, which is also impacting soil health, which is also impacting availability of water. So by doing this sequestration, you will be restoring water, you will be restoring soil health, and both these factors will be contributing in increasing the productivity as well. Now, when I talk about this carbon farming, it is a technique of agricultural practices in which, on one hand, you look to conserve the environment by sucking in more carbon. How can you do that? In your field, you can plant trees, agroforestry. You can practice more sustainable ways of agriculture, like organic farming and all. because pesticides and all, or fertilizers and all, they're also responsible for release of greenhouse gases. So you can adopt such kind of sustainable practices where you are targeting carbon sequestration. And on the other hand, you should be increasing productivity also. Can this be done? Because carbon farming is like having laddus in both your hands. On one hand, you are emitting less. On the other hand, you are increasing the productivity. Jabki the correlation is that you emit more, you increase the productivity. But here you are emitting less and you are increasing the productivity. It is like this. So how it can be done, we will see. Carbon is found in all living organisms and many minerals. It is very important element for photosynthesis, respiration, carbon cycle. Farming is the practice of cultivating land, raising crops, livestock, food, fiber, fuel, or other resources. Now, it encompasses wide range of activities from planting and harvesting crops to managing livestock. Everything is included in farming. It is not only crop farming. Livestock is also there and all. So here from this picture, you will see that how emissions are done. There are fires on the agricultural fields. From the fires, these kind of emissions will be emitted. First, I'm taking into account all the emissions. Then there is this cow dung and all which is kept. From that, gases are emitted, methane, N2O. Due to nitrogen fixation, again methane gets emitted. Oh, sorry, N2O gets emitted. Nitrogen fixation happens. It is a part of a process where crops grow and it intensifies with the application of fertilizers. Then this tractor comes, this emits rice field. There are methane emissions from the rice fields. Okay. So these are cows. They do that mulching. When they chew, they emit methane. So you know lot of sources of emissions from the agricultural fields. What are the sources of sequestration over here in this picture? This tree is a source of sequestration. But if we cut it, there will be less, I would say, uh, sequestration. They take in carbon dioxide, give oxygen. This grass and all over here, or the agricultural crops which will grow, they will take in carbon dioxide and give oxygen. Taking in carbon dioxide is also happening, giving of oxygen is happening, but emitting of greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane, N2O is also happening a lot. So, carbon farming basically aims at emitting less and taking in more. Now, in unsustainable agricultural practices, which happen everywhere almost, emissions are less, taking in is emissions are more, taking in is less. So, what is carbon farming? Carbon farming combines the two concepts of carbon, which is very much essential for our existence, and farming, which is a practice of cultivating and including livestock and all. Implementing regenerative agricultural practices that restore ecosystem health while improving agricultural productivity and soil health. So, carbon farming is that practice in which you are maintaining the ecological health. You are planting more and more trees. You are avoiding burning of the residue, crop residue, and all. On the other hand, you are improving the productivity by maintaining soil health and all. This is what carbon farming is. How can carbon farming help? Multiple ways in which carbon farming can be done and be helpful. First is agroforestry. So, as the name suggests, agro means agriculture and forestry means you grow trees. So, on the same land, you are cultivating crops and you are having trees. So, trees will act as carbon sinks. They will also help in retaining water, maintaining the soil health. So, silvopasture, a term is used. Silvopasture simply means a land where you are growing crops for feeding the animals, livestock, and you are growing trees also over there. Okay. Alley cropping. Alley cropping is basically relay cropping. It is also called as there is this one line of rice, let's suppose, which I have sown, and in the between I have sown pulses. Then conservation agriculture, I can do techniques such as zero tillage. Zero tillage means I'm not disturbing the soil. I'm directly drilling in and putting the seeds over there. I'm not disturbing it. I'm not too much turning it in and around. This disturbs the soil ecosystem. So zero tillage is like this, with which I can conserve the soil health and the soil ecosystem. Cover cropping, crop residue management properly can be done. Cover cropping means I can cover the soil with polythene and all, and so that it does not go away, and I will be providing water directly at the roots. So all these are conservation techniques in which I can conserve the soil health. Integrated nutrient management. Integrated nutrient management promotes soil fertility and reduce emissions by using organic fertilizers and compost. So this can happen because of fertilizers and all, synthetic fertilizers and all. Lot of emissions are there. Nitrous oxide, nitrogen fixation intensifies a lot. Then agroecology, crop diversification. It will you know uh, contribute to ecological diversity, and intercropping have benefits for ecosystem resilience. The more the diversity, the more resilient the ecosystem will be. Livestock management, rotational grazing means I take my livestock for grazing at a particular pasture. After grazing, I leave that pasture for, I would say, a few months or years. I go to other pastures so that regeneration can happen over there. If I again keep on going to that pasture only, grass will regenerate a little bit and I'll go for grazing. That will, destroy that land. So rotational means this year, this pasture, next year, this pasture, next year, this pasture. So that when I come back again to the first pasture, grass has grown. So that is what is called as rotational grazing. Optimizing feed quality. Whatever feed I'm giving to the cattle, that should be optimized. That should not entail too much of crops which have led to or which have a lot of carbon footprint. So that optimization has to be there. And land restoration last, it should be followed. Restoration means I should be finding various organic methods for restoring the fertility of my land or preparing it for the next crop. Burning is not, or crop residue burning is not the solution over here. It will lead to a lot of emissions. Now, factors impacting effectivity of carbon farming. There are multiple factors on which the effectivity of carbon farming depends. Like, for example, carbon farming is not so suitable in the hilly areas because vast amount of land is not there. It will only be beneficial if vast amount of land is there. Like geographical location is one such factor. Like in plains, you have vast pastures. There, it can be more effective carbon farming. Soil type, what type of soil it is. Crop selection, what types of crops you are selecting for practicing this carbon farming. Water availability is there or not. Biodiversity, how the biodiversity goes. Farm size and scale. As I told you, big sizes should be there. Land management practices, sufficient policy support, community engagement. All these are factors which are impacting the effectivity of carbon farming. Regions with long growing seasons, sufficient rainfall, and substantial irrigation are best suited to practice carbon farming. ऐसा नहीं है कि we cannot practice carbon farming in other areas, but yes, these are the areas where carbon farming is best suited for. But there are multiple challenges in carbon farming which are faced. These challenges, first is limited water availability with global warming and climate change, and less irrigation facilities also. Agriculture in most of the places is rain dependent. 60% of the agricultural fields in India are rain fed, means they are dependent on the rain. Irrigation facilities are not there. So, limited water availability is a challenge in carbon farming. And when there is less water availability, you tend to adopt practices which are unsustainable, which lead to more and more carbon emissions. You will apply more fertilizers. You will, you know, uh, intensify your activities during the rainy season because that is the only time water is available, which will lead to eventually more emissions. Lack of adequate knowledge and understanding. This is also another factor. Selecting which plants to grow also becomes crucial. Farmers in Maharashtra, they grew a lot of sugarcane, and sugarcane is a water intensive crop. Why they grew sugarcane? Because many political leaders over there in Maharashtra, they opened sugar mills over there as a lucrative business. They thought it was. The farmers started growing sugarcane over there, and sugarcane is a very water intensive crop, means it requires a lot of water. And in the rain shadow region of Maharashtra, where rainfall is less, there, this practice was being followed extensively as well. It led to subsequent drowning of the water tables over there because water was too much utilized by the farmers over there. And now they are in this kind of situation where droughts are frequent. The area has become as kind of a semi-arid area. So this adequate knowledge should be there. Which crops to grow, when to grow, it should be there. Fast growing trees and deep rooted perennial grasses tend to be better at this task. But on the other side, these types of plants may not be well suited to arid environment. So that kind of information, that kind of knowledge is very much needed, that what are going to be the implications of this particular crop or tree in this area. Like for example, another example over here is that India introduced eucalyptus trees in the country and did extensive planting of those eucalyptus trees. That eucalyptus trees, they grew, no doubt about the fact, but those eucalyptus trees consumed the water, or sucked the water of the nearby areas, leaving the nearby areas dry with less water. So when this happened, so that tree grew, it took away all the nutrients, soil nutrients and water, but the nearby, I would say, farms and all, or the nearby ecology, that suffered a lot. That is why eucalyptus was considered as an invasive species, because it invaded. It was introduced by humans from outside. It did not belong actually to that region, and it, despite of contributing to the ecological diversity, it hampered the ecological diversity. Then next is lack of financial assistance. Now most of the farmers are poor, small land holdings, and as the population is increasing, generations are progressing. So there are more and more these kind of things. The land holdings is reducing generation by generation. And these poor farmers, they will not go for carbon farming. They will go for increasing the productivity. They don't have that concentration. Acha yaar, we should emit less. There is global warming or not. That farmer will go for feeding his stomach first. Now, in that scenario, we need to, you know, give financial assistance to that farmer. Ki bhaiya, practice this, do this. We are giving financial assistance to you for doing this. And this is what the conservation techniques. This is what the carbon farming techniques, in which on one hand, environment will be conserved, and on the other hand, this will happen. Like productivity will increase. Now there are some global practices which are being followed. Carbon trading has become quite popular. So carbon trading in agriculture sector has also become popular in countries like US, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, where voluntary carbon markets have emerged. Initiatives like Chicago Climate Exchange, Carbon Farming Initiative in Australia demonstrate efforts to incentivize those farmers who are practicing carbon farming. So, this we have started in these countries. In Kenya, the Agricultural Carbon Project, which is being supported by the World Bank, funded by the World Bank, is being practiced. It is, I would say, a sustainable initiative undertaken by the World Bank in Kenya, which is a developing country. It is a classic example that in a developing country where the farmer's income obviously will be less as compared to the developed countries, there we establish these kind of practices of carbon farming. So let's see what the outcomes of this Kenya's agricultural carbon project will be. Now, next is 4 per thousand initiative. 4 per thousand initiative was adopted in COP21 in Paris 2015. Now, what is 4 per thousand? First of all, we will understand. As the name suggests, it is 0.4%. 0.4% is 4 upon 1000. If I numerically say this. Now, what does this mean? 4 per thousand initiative. 0.4% basically increase in carbon sequestration or carbon sink from the agricultural fields. If we increase the carbon sink from the carbon sink is where you are sinking in carbon. If we increase the carbon sink from the agricultural domain by 0.4% every year, we will be able to sink in all the additional greenhouse gases which are being emitted every year by the humans. Because every year there is an increase of greenhouse gases. So let's suppose in 2020, the greenhouse gases which were emitted were 1 billion tons. Just an example. And in 2021, the increase was 1.1 billion tons. So this 0.1 billion tons increase, this 0.1 billion tons increase of greenhouse gases in 2021 can be sucked in if we increase 0.4% carbon sink in the agricultural fields. So every year, the increase in greenhouse gases by the humans, not only from the agricultural field, overall increase of greenhouse gases by the humans can be offset by the increase in, carbon sinks in from the agricultural field. And increasing in carbon sink from the agricultural field is what? Carbon farming, because you are making your agriculture more sustainable. You are, let's suppose, planting more trees. You are practicing agroforestry or more sustainable practices you are doing. You are increasing carbon sinks in your agricultural fields that can offset the increased greenhouse gases. So this is what 4 per thousand initiative is. It was adopted in COP21, Paris, and you know, as the name suggests, mathematically it is 0.4%. So carbon farming in India. What are we doing about carbon farming in India? Now, regions with extensive agricultural land, such as Indo-Gangetic Plains and Deccan Plateau, are well suited to adopt carbon farming because here the agri field size is huge. You know, water availability is also there. Mountainous terrain of Himalayan region is less so. Coastal areas are prone to salinization, so they are also less. So the main is Indo-Gangetic and Deccan Plateau where this can be practiced. Carbon credit systems can also be implemented over here. Carbon market for agriculture can be practiced as it is opened in the United States and Australia. Studies have shown that agricultural soils can absorb 3 to 8 billion tons of CO2 equivalent every year over 20 to 30 years. Now, this capacity can bridge the gap between feasible emission reductions and indispensable, I would say, protection of the climate, which we have to do in this climate change scenario. So, in India, as such, carbon farming is not focused upon right now. We are focusing upon increasing the productivity of the farmers, increasing the income of the farmers. But I would suggest that simultaneously we should also be adopting these kind of practices because in India, there are certain traditional practices which are prevalent, practiced by certain farmers. Like the other day, we did about that relay cropping, in which rice and paddy and pulses they are, practiced. So uh, that can be done in India. There is potential, but as of now, our focus is not there too much on carbon farm. Now comes the MCQs. Consider the following statements and mark the correct one. Cervix cancer is common among males in India. Mouth cancer is common among females in India. Which among them is true? You have to answer. Which among the following are causes of increasing cancer among Indians? Air pollution, unhealthy diets, global warming, or unhealthy sexual practices? So, this out of this you have to tell. Third is carbon farming aims to reduce net emissions from agriculture sector. Carbon farming can be more effective in hilly terrains. Which among these two is correct? Simple question it is. Fourth is agricultural carbon project is being implemented in which country? France, India, Kenya, or Australia? Direct question. You can answer this. It is there in the notes as well. And last is which among the following impact carbon farming in some way or the other? Be very careful in answering this question. In some way or the other, positive, negative, both. Agroforestry, soil type, biodiversity, or policy support. Among these, which one impacts? And with this, I've come to an end of today's session. I will be meeting you tomorrow now with more such informative news pieces. Till then, you guys very well know what to do. Keep studying, keep reading, keep writing, and most importantly, keep revising. Namaste. Jai Hind.